Alright, everybody. So this week I am not feeling like showing my face. Coming down with a little bit of a rash from a skin infection. I guess that's too much information, but the point is, just gonna go ahead and toss up a little graphic today and just talk over it for a while. So, the topic that I want to cover this week is why your favorite program sucks. And I can tell you for certainty, you can toss in any program that you like. You can toss in starting strength. You can toss in 5x5, strong lifts, 5-3-1, juggernaut, whatever the hell you feel like. And the answer is that program is not going to work out for you for the long term. And the question basically is, okay, well, why is that? Why is it that you can start on a program and you're going to see decent results in the beginning, but then over time, you're going to get to a point where you're just not going to see results? So kind of the first thing is that when someone says that a program doesn't work for them, there's usually one of two approaches. There's one of two reasons that's happened. The first one is that they quit. So, someone comes and they start a program and they're doing okay, they're enjoying it, and then like 3 weeks later they get bored of it and they decide to start up a new program, and, they just move on to a different program, and so they're kind of like, okay, whatever, I didn't like that program. The other one is, a little bit more upsetting in some ways, and that's basically that they did a program and they kind of stopped seeing results, and they just kind of kept doing it for a really, really long time, and they kept not seeing results, and everything sort of sucked, and, that's really it. They just don't, they just, you just kind of get stuck in that spot, and they wait for a very long time before they decide to do anything about it. So, in the instance of the first case, people just didn't really stick it out to see results. So when, someone has started a program, realistically, it may take months or even years for results to really show up sometimes. When someone starts out a program for the first time, there's really good research about how basically a beginner starting a program for the first time will actually not really see any serious results in terms of muscle growth for at least the first month or so. They may see some results for strength simply because they're getting better neurological adaptations and, they're feeling a lot better, but they're not really building much muscle. And part of the reason for that is basically just that in the beginning, sort of the stress that you're putting on your body is really high. Your body's not used to this level of training. And so, it's just sort of overwhelming your body's ability to adapt. And then once the repeated bouts effect starts to kick in, you start to have, a little bit more resistance to that damage. Your body's a little bit more used to it. Then the adaptation part can really sort of start to kick in. So, some people, they'll say things like, oh, I tried this program for 3 weeks and it didn't work out. And it's like, well, of course it didn't work out. You didn't give it enough time to start working out. It can take months or, much longer. So if you're a person who is, jumping off of programs every month or so, trying a new program, maybe, you're like one of those strength guys who's like, okay, my bench is 200, and I tried this program for a month, and my bench didn't move, so I tried another program, and my bench didn't move, so I tried another program. You're never going to see your bench move because you're just skipping around programs too much. This is the typical program hopper. This is, kind of the person that gets made fun of a lot when you're, sort of, talking about someone who is really enthusiastic but probably doesn't know that much about training and is just sort of trying to figure out what the best program is for them. And, I want to add also that sometimes this actually can be the program's fault. So when you have a program and someone is skipping off of that program, really quickly, sometimes it's just because, maybe they don't have the patience yet or the personality for it. But there's also cases where, maybe that's the program's fault. Maybe the program is designed in such a way that it's super boring and you are someone who, really likes a lot of variety. Maybe it's just that the program does have way too much variety, and you're someone who prefers, very simple, basic, repetitive programming. So, some cases that does actually mean that yes, that program isn't a good fit for you, and maybe if you're a program hopper, you will eventually sort of swing around to finding the program that will work out for you. But that takes time, and I wouldn't recommend program hopping just for that sake. I would always recommend that you basically adapt programs. You take a program, you take a template that sort of works well and that you like, and you adapt it over time. But that's getting ahead of myself a little bit. To kind of move on to, of course, the other problem is people who have stuck with something for way too long, despite the fact that they aren't getting any results. So I can tell you, as a coach, I cannot tell you how many clients that I have gotten, and when they come to me and they start off, the story that I've heard is, okay, I did starting strength, I did 5-3-1, I did whatever, and I was doing it, and then it was working for a while, and then I just kind of stopped seeing results, and I just kept doing it for months or years afterwards. Everything felt terrible. I wasn't really progressing. It felt way too hard. I wasn't able to sort of continue to see improvements on that program, and yet they keep doing it. And I'll say I've even seen, I personally had a client come to me who said essentially that they had been doing this program for 2 years. 2 years without any, sign of progress. Everything had sucked the whole time. But then they just sort of assumed, okay, well, because it's one of the best programs on the market, it must be that, the problem is me and the problem is not the program. So the thing to understand with any program that you find in a book, anywhere, any program that you find on the internet, anything, this isn't going to be a program that is tailored to you. This is what I'm going to call a mass market program. So these programs are, they're designed in a certain way. They're designed to be generally applicable to as many people as possible. Because, of course, if a program is going to be popular and if it's going to be useful, then it has to be. And they're also going to maybe play it a little bit safe in some ways. Sometimes you get people who are, probably not great coaches or just not very bright. And, okay, they'll design a program that is, maybe a little bit too aggressive and, people could potentially get themselves hurt on it. But most coaches who are designing a mass market program are not going to do that. They're not going to make the most hardcore possible program that they can, simply because, that's not the goal. They're not trying to, blast people. They're not working with, maybe elite athletes who can, keep up with that. They're designing a program for everybody. They're designing a program for, beginner, intermediate, sort of level people. Programs that you find on the market are typically not going to be designed for you. They're going to be designed for sort of a beginner, intermediate lifter in mind, and, they're not going to work for everyone. So, what happens when you can't progress? What happens when you've taken one of these mass market programs and it's just not working out for you? Well, the reality, like I said, is that no mass market program is going to work out for you long term. You're an individual. You're not a machine that you just plug a program into and you get, the best possible results. Every person is going to have their own needs in terms of the kind of equipment that they have, in terms of sort of the kinds of movements that they can do without potentially, causing or exacerbating existing injury. Everyone's going to develop at their own rate, so you can't assume that someone is going to develop at the exact same rate as, some other trainee. You're going to have your own tolerance for volume and intensity. So, there's some really good research about how basically people actually react best to a style of training that works for them, and that, there are actually these real concrete differences in terms of, some people just develop much better, on different styles of training than other people. And probably the most important of that is basically the level of volume and, sort of intensity that you are, used to in your previous training. If I take someone who has never deadlifted before, and if I tell them to go, max out on a 1 rep deadlift, that's going to be way too much for them because they simply haven't done that before. They don't have any experience. Their body is not accustomed to that sort of thing. And so, they're likely to hurt themselves, or, at the very least, it's not going to be a useful thing to do. But, when you have someone that's been training for a long time and they've got a lot of training under their belt and they're very used to this sort of work, then yeah, you can potentially throw that sort of thing in. So what really matters, and, to this point, I'd like to just say, go ahead and look back at my previous videos on basically how to design a program for you. The thing that matters most is that you are doing challenging work, A, and B, that you're doing more and more challenging work consistently over time. If you're hitting a wall where everything is too hard for you, then that's a sign that you need to pull back, find a way to do less work, or to spread the work out, to spread the work that you have out a little bit more so that you can recover more. And then, of course, if you're feeling good, if things are feeling easy, then you want to step on the gas. You want to add more challenging work and find more ways to do more stuff. So the thing to understand here is that a program is a framework. It is not, sort of a, it's not like the program is the end-all be-all of your results. If the framework is good and it's empowering you and it's giving you the tools that you need to continue pushing forwards, then that is awesome. But if it's not, then it's a limitation that is holding you back. And if it's a limitation that's holding you back, then you need to either A, find a new program, or B, which I recommend a lot more often, is finding a way to adapt that program to be useful for your needs. So basically, you do want to stick it out at least a few months. You don't want to be that person who is sticking it out for 6 months or a year and they're not seeing any results. But you don't want to be that person who skips out after 15 days, 30 days, 45 days, when you really just haven't given things enough time to shake out. I personally have been training for over a decade, and so at this point, when I am training, I realistically don't expect to see results for 6 months to a year. It may take me, realistically, it's taken me, basically a couple years since I've last really focused on single rep maxes for powerlifting, and I've really only put about, I would say, 20 or 30 pounds on my main lifts each since then, which is really, probably about 10 pounds a year or so. But I've been training consistently during that time. I've been seeing the amount of work that I'm doing increase. I've been seeing the amount of volume that I'm doing increase. And so I learned to focus on that and not worry so much, from month to month about what my 1 rep max is doing. I'm focusing on increasing the amount of work that I'm doing, and so I can see results there and know that I am improving slowly over time, even if, I'm not doing a 1 rep max every month to test that. So, basically, that point where you are not seeing results from a program, that's sort of a decision point. So, at this point, either you find a good coach, someone who can sort of work with you to find the program that is going to work out for you, or you need to do a lot of learning to figure this out for yourself. So, that is certainly a much longer path. Realistically, I, as a, decent coach who has a decent amount of experience, I have, been coaching people for 8 years, and I would realistically say that, yes, everyone starts out, kind of crap, to be honest. And I didn't really hit my stride until about 4 years in, maybe 5 years in, when I was really, sort of good at what I did and where I really sort of knew what I was doing. And that was basically just a lot of learning that I had to do to become a better coach. That was a lot of reading blogs and reading books and, studying and, taking continuing education courses and doing everything I could to figure out everything I could about programming and how it all works and so on. And so, as a coach like that, I know a lot of ways to sort of tweak programs to suit a client's needs in terms of, okay, maybe they need to do a little bit more here or there. Maybe there's an exercise that, sort of would better fit into this slot that would, better fill their needs. There's all kinds of these little subtle ways that, you sort of gather this information over a long period of time. So the learning route is, it's certainly a very satisfying route, if you've gone through it. but it's also just a route that, takes a while, takes longer. At the end of the day, there are some simple ways that you can focus on adding volume. Slowly adding in more challenging sets. So if you're doing 3 challenging sets for the bench press one week, 4 sets the next week, 5 sets the week after that, 6 sets the week after that, or maybe that week you take a deload and drop back down. And then, of course, the following week, okay, you work at a different intensity, so you change the weight a bit, maybe go a little bit heavier. And then once again, you're just starting off at 3 sets, 4 sets, 5 sets, and so on. So adding sets is a pretty solid way, not worrying too much about the number of reps you hit in each set, so long as each set is taken challenging, near failure. Another option is basically just to do the same number of sets each week, but, basically adding in, a little bit more weight, a little bit more reps per set each week, taking it very slowly so that you're not hitting a wall. Another option is basically just to add more exercises slowly over time. This is kind of, basically the same thing as adding more sets, because you're just adding more sets in a different way. That is by, doing a different variation on the same exercise. So if, say, for example, you're doing 3 sets of the bench press this week, and then next week you're doing 3 sets of the bench press and 1 set of an incline bench press, and then the week after that, it's, 3 sets of bench, 2 sets of incline bench. The week after that, 3 sets of bench, 3 sets of incline bench. You're adding more work that is going to target roughly the same musculature, that is going to target roughly the same muscles. But, at the same time, you are, doing it in a different way, even though you're still just adding sets. The main thing, of course, also is to want to pull back when you need to. That's what deloads are for. Whenever you feel like you have added too much and your results are starting to suffer, your recovery is starting to suffer, you're not able to see consistent progress from week to week in terms of the amount of volume that you're able to do, that's when you need to take a deload, take a break, take a week that's easier, pull back, reset a little bit, maybe start out at a lower weight or a smaller number of sets, and then just progress forward from there again as usual. So I hope that this video has been helpful to everybody. As always, like, comment, share, tell me what you want to see in future videos, help me out with that YouTube algorithm, get me those sweet YouTube bucks. But that's really it for this week, probably a bit shorter of a video than usual. Hope you are all having a good weekend, and I will see you next week. Okay, and listen, I know that I just made that dumb, headline clickbait about starting strength stocking, but, it actually does. So we'll just maybe discuss that on a different video. Anyway, bye.